Most couples believe their biggest financial hurdle is the number in their bank account. They spend years fighting over spreadsheets and credit card statements, yet the tension never seems to fade. What if the real problem isn't the math, but the specific words you choose during those heated moments? There are 5 specific phrases that can instantly transform a financial standoff into a moment of deep connection. These aren't just polite suggestions, they are the secret vocabulary of the world's most financially harmonious partners. If you want to stop the cycle of money-related stress, you need to master this simple linguistic shift right now. This shift starts by acknowledging that we were never actually taught how to talk about money. Most of us grew up watching our parents whisper behind closed doors or argue over the kitchen table. We inherited a legacy of silence and shame without even realizing it. We enter relationships thinking that a shared bank account and a basic budget will solve everything. We assume that if the numbers add up on paper, the emotions will naturally follow. Unfortunately, logic rarely wins when deep-seated financial fears are triggered. Every individual brings a unique money story into their partnership, shaped by years of personal experiences. One person might view money as a tool for security, while the other sees it as a gateway to freedom. These conflicting perspectives are the hidden roots of almost every financial argument. Picture a typical Tuesday night when one partner mentions a surprise credit card charge. Suddenly, the atmosphere shifts from relaxed to defensive in a matter of seconds. The conversation isn't really about the purchase, it is about a perceived threat to the couple's shared safety. When we feel judged or controlled regarding our spending, our brains enter a state of fight or flight. In this neurological state, the rational part of the brain shuts down. This is why you find yourself saying things you later regret during a heated debate. Experts who study relationship longevity have found that it isn't the amount of money that predicts divorce. Instead, it is the way couples manage the inevitable disagreements that arise. Successful couples don't avoid the conflict, they navigate it with a specific set of tools. In the past, financial roles were often strictly defined by societal norms, leaving little room for negotiation. Today, we have more freedom, but that freedom requires a much higher level of communication. We are essentially pioneers trying to build a new model of financial partnership. Understanding this background is the first step toward breaking the cycle of frustration. Once you see the psychological machinery at work, you can begin to replace old habits with new patterns. Now, let's look at how these patterns formed in your own life before we change them. Your relationship with money didn't start when you opened your first bank account or received your first paycheck. It began much earlier, watching how the adults in your life whispered about bills or celebrated a promotion. These early observations became the invisible blueprint for how you handle every dollar today. When two people come together, they aren't just merging bank accounts, they are merging two completely different financial cultures. One person might view money as a tool for security, while the other sees it as a vehicle for immediate freedom. Without a shared language to bridge these gaps, these conflicting perspectives inevitably lead to friction. This friction often triggers a primal response in our brains, treating a budget discussion like a physical threat. We fall into defensive patterns, using words that act as barriers rather than bridges to our partners. This survival instinct is why even a small, unplanned purchase can quickly spiral into a major emotional argument. For generations, talking openly about money was considered impolite or even taboo, leaving us without a proper education in financial dialogue. We were taught how to save and how to spend, but rarely how to speak about our underlying fears and aspirations. This cultural silence has created a void where resentment and misunderstanding can easily grow over time. Modern life has only added layers of complexity with digital payments and invisible transactions that make money feel less tangible. It is easier than ever to lose track of shared goals when the financial landscape is constantly shifting under your feet. This environment demands a level of transparency and verbal clarity that most of us were never trained to provide. Breaking these deeply ingrained cycles requires more than just a better spreadsheet or a higher household income. It requires a fundamental shift in the way you approach every single conversation about your shared resources. By understanding where your old habits came from, you are finally ready to introduce the specific phrases that will change the game. Understanding your past is a powerful foundation, but it doesn't automatically stop the tension when a real-world crisis hits. You might know why you feel anxious about a large purchase, but that knowledge often vanishes the moment you see an unexpected charge on the joint account. This is where the theoretical meets the practical, and where most couples find themselves stuck in a loop of repetitive arguments. Imagine the heavy silence that follows a discovery of a hidden debt or a significant overspend on a luxury item. That suffocating quiet isn't just about the money, it is the sound of trust beginning to fracture under the weight of unmet expectations. In this moment, the old patterns of blame and defense are screaming to be heard, threatening to derail everything you have built together. You feel the familiar heat rising in your chest and the sharp words forming at the back of your throat. Your brain is signaling a red alert, urging you to protect yourself by attacking your partner's choices or character. This is the exact point where the cycle of financial friction becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy of distance and resentment. If you continue down this path, the numbers will eventually become the least of your worries. You realize that winning the argument about a specific dollar amount often means losing the heart of the person standing across from you. The cost of being right is becoming far too expensive for the long-term health of your relationship. To break this destructive momentum, you need a circuit breaker that stops the emotional escalation before it becomes irreversible. You need a way to pivot from a state of combat to a state of curiosity without losing your own sense of financial security. This is the turning point where we stop talking about the problem and start using the language of the solution. The first phrase that changes everything is remarkably simple. I feel anxious about our security when I see this, can we look at it together? This shift moves the focus from your partner's perceived failure to your own internal experience of the situation. It invites them into your world instead of pushing them away with an accusation or a demand for an explanation. By leading with your vulnerability rather than your judgment, you instantly lower the defensive walls that usually block productive conversation. Your partner is no longer an adversary to be defeated, but a teammate who is being asked to help carry a heavy emotional burden. This single linguistic choice transforms the energy of the room from one of conflict to one of collaborative problem-solving. Once you utter these words, there is no going back to the old, toxic way of handling financial surprises. You have officially crossed the threshold into a new era of transparency where every challenge is an opportunity for deeper intimacy. Now that the cycle is broken, we can explore the remaining phrases that will solidify this new foundation of trust. But even with this new foundation, a sudden financial shock can still test your resolve. Imagine the moment you discover a hidden debt or a significant investment that went south without your knowledge. This is the precise point where your old instincts scream for you to retreat into anger and blame. The air in the room thickens as the weight of the revelation sets in, making the future feel uncertain. You realize that the spreadsheet you both agreed on was based on an incomplete picture of reality. This discovery isn't just about the lost money, it is a fundamental breach of the shared vision you were trying to build together. You stand at a crossroads where the path you choose will define the next decade of your relationship. Falling back into the old pattern of accusations would be easy, but it would also destroy the progress you have made. This is the irreversible shift where you must decide if the connection you share is more valuable than being right about the mistake. To survive this crisis, you need more than just a plan to pay back the debt, you need a bridge back to trust. The silence that follows a financial blow is where resentment takes root, unless you fill it with the right words. It is time to deploy the first of the 5 phrases that will keep your partnership intact when the numbers don't add up. Even when you start using these new phrases, the transition is rarely a smooth, straight line toward success. You might find yourself sitting down for your first money date with high hopes, only to realize that years of old habits are still lurking beneath the surface. It is one thing to have the right words, but it is another thing entirely to use them when your heart is racing. You try to stay calm as you open the banking app together, but your partner's nervous tapping on the table starts to grate on your nerves. This is the first real barrier, the physical and emotional muscle memory of past conflicts. Your brain recognizes the setting and automatically prepares for a fight, even if you have promised to do things differently this time. Many couples fall into the trap of one person becoming the financial lead while the other remains a passive observer. This dynamic often creates an accidental hierarchy where the lead feels burdened and the observer feels controlled. You might think you are being helpful by taking charge, but you are actually building a wall of resentment that will eventually crumble. As you dig deeper into your monthly spending, you discover that your definitions of necessity are miles apart. What you see as a vital investment in your health, your partner might view as an unnecessary luxury that drains your savings. These initial discoveries can feel like a setback, making you wonder if you were ever truly on the same page to begin with. In an attempt to fix everything at once, you might try to implement a rigid, complex budgeting system that neither of you can actually maintain. This overcorrection creates a new kind of stress, where every small deviation from the plan feels like a personal failure. You are essentially trying to run a marathon before you have even learned how to walk together in the same direction. Suddenly, the voices of friends or family members start to creep into your private conversations, adding unnecessary pressure. You hear about a sibling's perfect investment strategy or a friend's extravagant vacation, and you start comparing your messy reality to their curated highlights. This external noise makes it even harder to focus on the unique financial language you are trying to develop within your own home. You might feel a wave of frustration when the first few conversations don't result in an immediate financial miracle. It is tempting to think that the phrases aren't working or that your partner isn't trying hard enough to change. This is the moment where most people give up and revert to their old, defensive ways of communicating about money. The tension begins to mount as you realize that simply changing your vocabulary isn't a magic wand for all your problems. You are facing the reality that real change requires a level of consistency that feels exhausting in the face of daily life. This is the first major test of your new commitment, and the stakes have never felt higher for your relationship's future. You try to use the new phrases, but they often feel forced and unnatural in the heat of the moment. It is like trying to speak a foreign language while your emotional house is on fire. You might stumble over your words, making the situation feel even more awkward than the silence you were trying to avoid. Your partner might not respond with the same level of openness right away, leaving you feeling exposed and vulnerable. They might still be operating from their own blueprint of fear, reacting with skepticism instead of the empathy you were hoping for. This mismatch in effort can make you feel like you are the only one trying to save the sinking ship. You soon discover that the obstacles aren't just about the words you choose, but the timing of the conversation itself. Trying to discuss a budget after a long day at work or right before bed is often a recipe for disaster. You begin to see that the environment and your physical state play a massive role in how these financial seeds take root. The frustration peaks when a small misunderstanding about a grocery bill turns into a debate about your entire future. It feels as though every step forward is met with 2 steps back into the familiar territory of blame. You start to wonder if your financial styles are simply too different to ever truly harmonize. This clash over a simple grocery bill isn't actually about the price of eggs or bread, it is a collision of 2 different survival strategies. When you argue about the small stuff, you are actually fighting for validation of your internal fears and your sense of safety. It is the moment where your subconscious beliefs about scarcity and abundance finally come to a head in the middle of the kitchen. To move past this, we have to investigate why these numbers carry so much emotional weight for both of you. One of you might see a growing savings account as a shield against a traumatic past, while the other sees it as a cage preventing them from living in the present. Without addressing these underlying motivations, every financial discussion will feel like a personal attack on your core values. The biggest hurdle in this confrontation is the desperate need to be right about how money should be handled. We often treat our financial habits as moral imperatives, viewing our partner's different approach as a character flaw rather than a different perspective. This moralizing of math creates a toxic environment where compromise feels like a betrayal of your own common sense. We often simplify our conflicts by labeling one person as the spender and the other as the saver, but this binary is a trap. These labels ignore the complex emotional needs behind every transaction, whether it is the need for joy, security, or social belonging. When we stop using these labels, we can finally begin to see the human being behind the bank statement. This is where the second transformative phrase comes into play. What does this specific expense represent for you in terms of your happiness or security? This question forces a pause in the argument and shifts the focus from the dollar amount to the emotional intent. It requires you to listen to the why before you ever attempt to negotiate the how of your budget. As you dig into these answers, you might uncover fears you didn't even know your partner carried. You realize that their insistence on a luxury item might be a way to feel successful after a childhood of lack, or their hoarding of cash as a response to a previous financial failure. These revelations are uncomfortable because they strip away the surface-level anger and leave you with raw, unfiltered vulnerability. Confronting these deep-seated patterns is exhausting work that often makes things feel worse before they get better. You are essentially dismantling the old, dysfunctional structure of your relationship to build something more resilient in its place. It is a messy, non-linear process that requires more patience than most of us feel we have during a heated debate. Even with this deeper understanding, you will still face moments where your goals seem fundamentally incompatible. The challenge isn't just understanding each other's past, it is deciding how to weave those 2 different histories into a single, cohesive future. We are now entering the most critical part of the process, where we turn this newfound empathy into a concrete strategy for shared wealth. The transition from empathy to strategy often reveals a deeper layer of conflict regarding your long-term values. You might agree on the emotions, but when it comes to allocating actual dollars toward a dream home versus a retirement fund, the friction returns. This is where your individual priorities must be negotiated with the same level of care you used for your initial emotional breakthroughs. Often, one partner relies on cold logic while the other is driven by the emotional security that money provides. This clash can make you feel like you are speaking two entirely different languages, even when you use the same words. You must recognize that neither perspective is wrong, they are simply different tools designed to protect the same shared future. The real battle happens when you realize that a shared strategy requires letting go of some of your personal financial control. It feels like a loss of autonomy, sparking a defensive instinct to hide small expenditures just to maintain a sense of freedom. This internal tug-of-war is the ultimate test of whether you truly trust the partnership more than your own individual safety net. As you confront these hidden fears, the conversation shifts from how much you spend to what you are building together. You begin to see that every dollar is actually a vote for the life you want to create as a unit. By leaning into this discomfort, you prepare yourselves to master the remaining linguistic tools that turn these difficult negotiations into a source of strength. After weeks of these intense conversations, you might finally feel a sense of calm washing over your household. The shouting matches have subsided, and the banking app no longer feels like a ticking time bomb. You start to believe that you have finally cracked the code to a perfect financial partnership and that the hard work is officially over. You have the budget spreadsheets color-coded and the new phrases memorized like a script. It feels as though the obstacles have vanished and the path forward is finally clear of any emotional debris. You congratulate yourselves on surviving the worst of the storm, assuming the harmony will now maintain itself without further effort. But then, a sudden, unexpected expense hits, a car repair or a medical bill, and the old tension snaps back into place instantly. Despite all your progress, you find yourselves retreating into those familiar corners of blame and defensive silence. It feels as if all those deep conversations were just a temporary band-aid on a wound that refuses to heal. This is the moment of total exhaustion where you might conclude that some couples are simply not meant to talk about money. You wonder if the emotional cost of this transparency is actually higher than the financial problems you were trying to solve. The weight of the recurring conflict makes you want to give up and go back to separate accounts and hidden habits. You realize that having the right words wasn't the final destination you thought it was. It feels like you've reached the end of your rope, and the tools you've learned are failing you when the stakes are highest. You start to believe that maybe the experts were wrong and your relationship is the one exception that can't be fixed. Maybe it's better to just stop trying so hard and accept that money will always be a point of friction. You stop scheduling the money dates and let the spreadsheets gather digital dust, resigned to a life of quiet financial coexistence. It feels like the end of the experiment, leaving you with a sense of hollow peace that is actually just suppressed resentment. You look at other couples who seem to have it all figured out and feel a profound sense of personal failure. You've followed the steps and used the phrases, yet the core of the problem still feels untouched and raw. It seems as though the promise of financial harmony was just a beautiful illusion that you couldn't quite grasp. Just as you are ready to close the book on this journey, you notice a tiny, persistent gap in your strategy that you completely overlooked. You realize that while you've been managing the present and healing the past, you've missed the one phrase that governs your entire future. There is one final, hidden layer of communication that changes everything, and without it, all your previous work remains incomplete. This hidden layer reveals itself when you realize that you have been treating your finances like a problem to be solved rather than a story to be written together. You've mastered the art of discussing the bills, but you haven't yet learned how to discuss the legacy you want to leave behind. It is the crushing difference between simply surviving the month and actually designing a life that feels meaningful to both of you. When you only focus on the mechanics of the budget, you inadvertently turn your partner into a coworker instead of a companion. The spark of romance is often extinguished by the cold light of a spreadsheet because the why behind the numbers has been lost in the noise of the how. You might feel like you've gained a business partner but lost the person you originally fell in love with, making the whole effort feel like a failure. This sense of loss can lead to a quiet withdrawal, where you stop sharing your true desires because they feel too expensive or impractical in the face of your new rules. You start to edit your dreams before they even leave your lips, fearing that they will only cause more friction in your carefully constructed system. This self-censorship is the final, invisible barrier that keeps you from achieving the true financial harmony you've been working so hard to find. To break through this wall, you must introduce the most courageous phrase in the entire framework. What is the one thing we could do with our money that would make us feel like a team again? This question bypasses the logic of the budget and speaks directly to the heart of your partnership. It invites a level of shared dreaming that transforms your financial struggle into a unified mission for the very first time. This question acts as the master key, unlocking the door to the final three phrases that complete your financial vocabulary. When you ask what makes you feel like a team, you stop looking at the bank account as a scorecard and start seeing it as a shared resource for joy. It shifts the energy from defensive protection to creative expansion, allowing you both to breathe again. The third essential phrase is, how can we make this work for us, rather than me or you? This simple shift from individual ownership to collective problem solving removes the ego from the negotiation table entirely. It forces you to look at every financial hurdle as an external challenge that you are facing side by side, rather than an internal conflict between your competing desires. The final piece of the puzzle is the phrase of grace: I trust your intention, even if I don't yet understand your logic. This is the ultimate safety net for your financial conversations, providing a buffer when mistakes inevitably happen or when communication breaks down. It assumes the best of your partner, creating a culture of psychological safety where honesty can flourish without the fear of immediate judgment. These 5 phrases form a complete ecosystem of financial harmony that transforms the cold, hard data of your life into a living dialogue of mutual respect. You are no longer just managing a household, you are cultivating a legacy of trust that will outlast any bank balance. By using this vocabulary, you turn every dollar into a vote for the strength of your partnership. As these words become your natural way of speaking, the friction that once defined your marriage begins to feel like a distant memory. You find yourselves looking at the future with a sense of excitement rather than dread, knowing you have the tools to handle whatever comes your way. The true climax of this journey isn't a specific number in the bank, but the unshakable confidence that you are finally, truly, on the same team. This confidence is anchored by the final and most powerful phrase in our framework: how can we use our resources to honor our shared values today? This shifts the focus from a distant, stressful future to the immediate power of your combined intent. It transforms your bank account from a source of anxiety into a tool for intentional living. By integrating these 5 linguistic tools, you bridge the gap between individual survival and collective thriving. You are no longer merely reacting to bills, you are proactively designing a life that reflects your deepest commitments to one another. This is where the math finally meets the heart, creating a synergy that makes financial obstacles feel like opportunities for growth. The tension that once felt like a permanent wall has now become a bridge that connects your different perspectives. You realize that your partner's unique relationship with money isn't a hurdle to be cleared, but a vital asset to be leveraged. Together, you have built a sanctuary of transparency where every financial decision strengthens the bond of your relationship. You have successfully moved from the chaos of confrontation to the clarity of a shared vision. This is the ultimate fulfillment of the promise we began with: true financial intimacy that transcends the numbers on a screen. You are now equipped to navigate any storm, secure in the knowledge that your words are the strongest currency you will ever own. This new mastery of language transforms your daily life into a series of small, meaningful victories. You no longer wake up with that heavy knot in your stomach when a bill arrives in the mail. Instead, you face every financial crossroad with a calm assurance that your partnership is stronger than any number. The legacy you are building extends far beyond your own bank account and into the lives of those who watch you. By modeling this level of financial empathy, you are teaching the next generation that money is a tool for connection rather than a weapon of control. You are creating a blueprint for a life where transparency and love are the primary currencies of the home. Ultimately, financial harmony is not a destination you reach, but a continuous practice of choosing the right words. It is the daily commitment to see your partner's fears with compassion and your shared goals with unwavering clarity. When you change your vocabulary, you change the very foundation of your relationship, turning a source of stress into a source of strength. Now that you have mastered the language of collaboration, you are ready to apply this unity to the actual growth of your wealth. The next step is understanding how to align your new communication skills with a practical strategy for long-term abundance. Join me in the next session as we explore how to turn your shared vision into a powerful investment plan that secures your future.